Is this guy high or something? I mean, what is this?
Why do you love me so much? God, I want to taste.
Pandora's Tower is definitely one of my favorite games for the Wii, like top 10 at the least. And I want to collect together why exactly that is. Because by all accounts, I feel like I should have been neutral about this game, or at the very least, I didn't think I would love it as much as I did. So I want to get to that first, why I was set up into thinking so. This game is an action RPG developed by Ganbarian, who, prior to this, really just made a lot of One Piece games. Well, anyways, being an RPG, there's certain elements to the genre that I was expecting, like a good amount of characters to get to know, or locations to visit. Yeah, you see these three? With very few exceptions, these are the only characters you'll be seeing throughout the game. And as for locations, alright, well about 95% of the game is spent going around the towers. The other 5% is spent hanging out with Elena in the observatory, though I'll get more into that in a bit. So because the game primarily takes place in the 13 towers, my mind painted this picture. Okay, think a Legend of Zelda game with only dungeons. No exploring a field or any outdoor locations, no talking to NPCs who aren't these two, no visiting a town or village, just beat a tower then move on to the next one. Oh, and add a fixed camera to the mix. Now of course there's a little more to the game than that, but that's basically how things work. Why this was a problem for me is because I freaking hate dungeons in Zelda. Like, I rarely find any enjoyment in going through them. So considering all this game would be is just going through dungeons, meh. Though to Pandora's Tower's credit, the towers are pretty well laid out, with a bunch of great puzzles to boot. I still hate puzzles though. Yet despite all that, I didn't end up hating the game, quite the opposite. Was it the gameplay? Well, that's actually also one of the game's highlights. Being an action RPG, you fight enemies in real time, though looking at how it plays, it can sometimes feel like a hack and slash, but hey, that's fine by me. You also have a weapon called the Oracle's Chain, which is controlled using the Wiimote's motion controls, and I think it works really well. They definitely make great use of it for the puzzles. Though something worth noting is you interact with objects with the Oracle's Chain by pointing the Wiimote at the screen, and with the game's fixed camera, well, it leads to a few awkward mishaps, but yes, I found the gameplay very enjoyable. But what I think really drives this game home for me are two things: the story presentation and Elena herself. Now the plot is pretty straightforward. Elena has been cursed and is due to turn into a monster, and you basically have to go to the 13 towers and have her eat the flesh of the masters, aka the bosses, and then the curse is lifted. Now of course, like the gameplay, there's much more details than what I explained, but that's basically the gist of it. As I played through the game, certain questions really just started to dwell on me. Like, why was Elena infected with the curse in the first place? What's the deal with the 13 towers and the scar, the name of the chasm below the towers? What's Mavda's stake in this, and why is she guiding us throughout? How much does she really know and why? Mavda herself is also a very suspicious character. I mean, just look at her. Most of the world building is told through scraps of paper which is found throughout the game, stuff that Elena can translate. The more documents that's uncovered, the more the world is opened up. I found myself really intrigued with the world within this game, which freaking sucks because, like I said, you're stuck in the goddamn towers. Another mystery that rises up is each time Elena eats the flesh of the masters, or in other words, each time a tower is beaten, she starts having these strange visions of some couple. And every time it made me wonder, who are these people? Is this from the past or the future, and where does the connection lie? It was the mystery of the narrative that drove me to play through the game. Though that wasn't the only thing that the game had me caring about. Considering the only NPC we interact with besides Mavda is Elena, they better damn well make sure this is the best NPC ever. And to be honest, they did a pretty damn fine job.
No, it's not like they had much of a choice.
Honestly, anyone who's ever used the term waifu unironically would probably find plenty of enjoyment with this game. You have an affinity gauge, so of course the more you make Elena happy by talking to her and giving her stuff, the more it goes up, and on the flip side, the more you say things that piss her off and show her weird stuff, it goes down. The ultimate outcome is the ending of the game, of which there are 4 you can get depending on how high your affinity gauge is. And let me just say, each of them will make you feel. Of course I tried to get the best ending on my first playthrough, so I tried my best in pleasing her as much as I can. Considering all the time I spent with Elena, I found myself getting attached to her character, which is good, since that's a pretty important aspect in which the game revolves around. She's very caring towards Aaron, the main character, loves to sing and just likes to enjoy life. It really is terrible what she has to go through with the curse. The bond she has with Aaron is there, and it's shown through various occasions in the game. It's not a stretch to say that she basically is what makes the game. She is the game. Everything you do is for Elena's sake. I'd probably even say that your enjoyment of the game hinges on how much you want to get to know Elena, how far you're able to take up that affinity gauge. Yes, the gameplay is very good in its own right, but the union that's formed with Elena is what motivated me to keep going. I want to see how the story panned out. I want to see why it's happening to her in the first place. I called her an NPC just now, but she's seriously much more than that. Her and Aaron are the essence of Pandora's Tower. I mean, they have to be. They're like 2/3 of the characters of the game. I don't know if I want to say she's one of my favorite females in video games, because that's exactly the kind of trap they're making us go for, but I do look at her in a certain light. And I don't know, maybe I was just too easily swayed by this, but I do genuinely like Elena a lot. And when I say her and Aaron are the essence of the game, I really just meant Elena. I mean, Aaron only says like 5 words in the entire game, which is pretty notable for me, since prior to this, I had played a couple of RPGs where the main characters had mountains of dialogue. Although that sounds like a nice spot to tie this off, there's one particular incident within the game that I need to mention that just completely made the entire thing for me, and that ties into both Elena and the presentation. Now the thing is, this incident was pretty circumstantial, so I can't really say that everyone who's played this had the same game making experience, but even so, it's something I really want to share. Okay, first off, while you're in the towers, you have this beast gauge which shows to what degree Elena has transformed into a beast while she waits in the observatory. Basically, the lower the gauge gets, the more of a monster she becomes physically. The gauge goes down over time, and you restore it by giving her the flesh of monsters that you fight inside the towers. Needless to say, if it goes all the way down, then it's game over. Okay, so it was the 6th tower, and Elena's gauge was getting low, like less than half. Thing is, the only thing I had left to do at the tower was to beat the master, so I didn't think that giving her some average flesh was too important, since it would be like over and done with once I beat this boss. The boss battles in this game are amazing, by the way. What I didn't expect was for this boss to take up so much time. It was one of those frustrating bosses where you kinda get the strategy, but still gives you plenty of trouble, either way. Because it took me so much time to get it down, Elena's gauge was running really low, and I just kept thinking I need to hurry up and finish this guy or Elena's gonna turn into a monster. And during the last few moments, I had this rush going through me, and I had that same thought over and over again. Eventually, the only thing I had in mind was Elena, and I had to get to her as quickly as I can, and the gauge was getting dangerously low, and the screen just started to pulsate, and just everything about that moment was just so intense. And by the time I actually beat him, the gauge was practically non-existent. Like, I swear, if I had delayed for just 1 more minute, or even less, it would have been all over. And with all of that weighing in mind, I went back to Elena to give her the Master Flesh, and what I saw was just horrific. Like 90% of her body had been taken over, and she was just so out of it. Every single thing about that just hit me so hard, the visuals, the adrenaline, and the emotions that I personally felt, that I was this close to losing it all. It's an experience that I will never forget, and easily one of the most memorable I've ever had in all of gaming. And it doesn't even stop there. Remember how I mentioned that each time Elena eats a Master Flesh, she gets some strange visions about a couple? Well, without going into spoilers, something very tragic happens to the couple, which in a way is sort of the reason why the game happens, but again, not going into spoilers. And honestly, even now, I still can't believe I had that experience with Elena almost transforming at that particular point in the game, where this very traumatic thing happens to these people that we frankly don't even know. Haunting is probably the best way I can describe this entire scenario. And it doesn't quite end there, because in the next morning, after when you almost let Elena transform into a monster, the next time you find Elena, she's standing at the edge of the rooftop, and she's once again completely out of it, and the whole tone for that moment was just so eerie. And yeah, that's basically the experience I had with this game that just made it completely win me over. And just one last kicker about that whole thing, it happened to be on the same week as Halloween, like probably even a day or so after it. Though later not, Halloween 2015 will be one I'll always remember. But now I'm done rambling, and that's Pandora's Tower for the Wii. For a personal experience or not, one of my favorite Wii games ever, and is available for download on the eShop for the Wii U. and I strongly recommend you guys give the game a look, even if it looks like something you might not get into, as I'm a primary example of this. The one last important thing to note, and everyone should be aware of this going into the game, on the last two towers, the 11th and 12th, the Dawn and Dusk tower, there's a strange glitch that can cause your game to freeze just by going into them. It doesn't happen all the time, so it's not game breaking, and there are workarounds, but it's definitely something you should be aware of when you get to that point. And I'm not sure if this was fixed or not in the Wii U version, but be wary either way.